Hi, as William mentioned, my name is Forrest White. I'm Senior Director of Technology, Transformation, and Total Rewards, and I work in the HR department for Automation Anywhere. I want to talk a little bit about some automation we've done recently in support of something we're calling our Talent Investment Program. This program is designed to help us to collect information about the people that work for Automation Anywhere and understand better how we can serve them, how we can create amazing careers at Automation Anywhere. So I'm going to talk through some of this program and how we've designed this, beginning with an assessment. So we asked managers to complete an assessment for a number of employees. This was a couple of teams partnering together internally within Automation Anywhere. And what we were trying to accomplish was getting some answers around employee performance, relevance to the future, which you could think of as, performance meets company strategy, alignment on values, and also what the manager's perception was around retention risk for this employee. So we asked a number of questions, and we're asking for responses back for each of these questions. And this data that we're collecting is really intended for us to take out some of the subjectivity out of this process. Talent reviews in general usually require a lot of calibration meetings and conversations to sort of feel your way through getting people into the right category or however you're categorizing your talent. By using a survey tool like this with so many different dimensions and our ability to weight each question, we can come up with a more scientific approach to this process, which can be very time consuming otherwise. So once this questionnaire is completed by a manager, we have an automation that runs that turns each of these scores into a number. It also applies a question level weighting and a section level weighting so that we can come up with some overall scores. So the first thing this automation does is it takes these textual responses, converts them into numeric values, applies the weightings, and then summarizes the scores for each subsection and section. Ultimately, what we come up with is a performance score, a relevance to the future score, and a retention risk score. This automation we did just for a pilot program, created over 12,000 values. And basically, it's taking all the results you're seeing in the survey and creating one row of data for each person. If we were to do this company-wide for, say, 1,700 or so people, this would save us about 52 hours worth of effort and create over about 130,000 values, just with this one automation. Now, we have other automations that we've used, and we'll talk about in just a moment. The typical 9-box talent model is potential and performance. We're using performance and relevance to the future. Again, think of relevance as potential and company strategy combined. And for us, what's interesting about this approach is, if you think about a typical talent review 9-box, people end up in one box or another. We're able to see exactly where people are within a box as well. So the lines you see drawn here are based on where we're dividing who ultimately ends up in each box. Each of these dots is a person. Based on the scores that we got back from the manager and the weightings that we apply to them, we can see where people end up in this 9-box. And not just that, but how close they are to another box. Maybe they're on the line and there's some edge case there that needs to be discussed between peer managers to see if that person is really above or below, left or right of that line. So this level of granularity is actually pretty interesting. And we think that being able to use this data and show how data trends over time as we do these assessments again in the future, we'll be able to see how a person's performance and relevance has changed over time as well. So the next step was to get some information from our employees. So we did a career growth survey. And this survey was designed to collect information about people's career experience at Automation Anywhere. We're really looking at understanding what's going well, what do they value, what's not going well for them, and what do they think about their own risk. These questions weren't designed to be very sort of deliberate about each of these things, or we're sort of arriving at conclusions based on a set of questions and answers. We're not asking employees necessarily, what is the risk level of you leaving? We're asking questions about their experience and then deriving that result ourselves. So now we have a manager assessment and an employee assessment. And we run another automation. The automation takes data out of this survey tool, again, assigns numeric values to each of the question results, and calculates an employee risk score for every employee. The final output of all this is a PowerPoint slide. So we put one PowerPoint slide together for every employee. This is an example. This is made up information, obviously. We have Albert Einstein here, who was hired on 12/12 of 2019. His last focal performance rating was exceeds. We can see some other information about Albert here. His comp ratio, a little bit below midpoint, 32% unvested from an equity perspective. This data also shows where they ended up in the 9 box. In this case, it was a box 1. And from the manager's perspective, what is the risk score for this employee? It was medium. The employee's perspective was different. It was high. So there's a little bit of a disconnect that the manager would want to dig into here. We also served up to the managers some highlights from the employee career experience survey. And we want to share with managers what's going really well for these employees. It helps the manager to understand also what the employees value in their experience. And then on the lower right section here, we have some compensation gaps. For example, this employee being below midpoint, recommend having a salary adjustment at the next salary planning cycle. And based on this person's criticality of their role, high performance, very high relevance, we're recommending that we put some additional retention measures in place, such as a stock option grant. In addition, based on the results from the employee survey, we have some other things we're serving up to the manager. We're suggesting that this person would value having a deeper discussion with their manager about their professional goals, getting guidance about how to grow themselves, and creating additional visibility at the executive level. This person also reported back on their survey that they didn't feel like they were achieving the right balance between personal and professional work. So we suggest that the manager also spend some time with them reviewing time off and getting a commitment to take some time off. Altogether, for this small pilot program that we ran, we created quite a lot of data. And if we were to do this at a larger scale, I would say for every 1,500 or so employees, it would take about 6 months for one person to do all this work. By the way, the automation that we were discussing that did work on the manager assessment, did work on the employee survey, also created all of these PowerPoint slides for us. And with that, let me share with you what that looks like. So this is a video of us logging into a 2019 control room, going into our bot inventory, finding a bot to run, and kicking it off. This video is going to show you some sample data, right? These are made up people with made up scores. And so the first thing you're going to see happen is we have to fill out some data for us to use. So we have got employee Olive Finch here. We're filling out some answers as if the manager was doing this, okay? And then the step after that is we're going to start assigning numeric scores to each of these ratings. So you can see, for example, disagree might be worth a 0.25, et cetera. We worked with each of our leaders to figure out what was the right weighting for each question, as well as each section within this manager assessment. Once we have that and the manager's response, we can actually score and fully weight all of those questions in order for it to give us a final score. And we take these scores and we have the automation, which is doing all the work that you're seeing here. And then what you'll see next, once it gets through all 4 folks, is moving that data into a more useful format for analysis. And that format was what led to us being able to have the scatter graph that you saw earlier in the presentation. So here, the automation is now taking all the data that was in this long vertical list of questions, and it's creating a single row of data for every employee, where questions are the columns. And we've also got columns for our section scores and total scores. And it's going to repeat this again for all 4 of our employees. Now we've created some pauses and some notices that pop up during this video so that it goes slow enough for you to be able to see what's actually happening. The bot moves very, very quickly, of course, when it does this work. And it does it with perfect accuracy. Okay, so next is calculating the risk score for our employees. So remember, these employees now took their own survey. We've got those results back, and we're figuring out, based on the results, what risk score would we apply? And based on the percentage result that comes back, we're categorizing that as either low, medium, or high risk. All right, so that automation is done. The next thing we're doing is converging some of that data. So we have data from the manager assessment and the employee assessment. We've got data coming out of Workday. We've got data coming out of multiple systems here. Now we're going to take all that data and combine it into a single place, which is this PowerPoint slide we looked at earlier. And you'll see this repeat this step a number of times for each employee, but the layout will be the same for each one. The results will be different, of course, depending on their individual survey results and assessment results. So Olive here is low risk, joined us in 2010. You can see comp ratio, percent unvested. What we want to highlight to the manager is going well. What we want to highlight to the manager are areas of opportunity to improve their career experience and thus creating a higher level of retention for these employees. And our intent is to do this across the entire company. This is not something we would have been able to do without automation. The human effort required to, manipulate these files, crunch these numbers, build these PowerPoints, and get these into the hands of their managers, it really would have taken a significant amount of time, so much so that by the time we finished, the data wouldn't be relevant anymore. But through automation, we can do this basically instantly, and we can do it as often as we want. And so this process that you're seeing here is now taking these PowerPoints, saving them into a directory, naming the files correctly so that we know who they belong to, and then ultimately we can share those with the managers. I'm really excited about this automation. I'm really excited about what Automation Anywhere can do with this technology in human resources. We have a number of different automations that we've built, a number that we're still building in our future. We've got a pretty significant backlog of automations that we're excited to create. And I'm happy to have been able to share this one. Thank you.